Hello, here I am, House Shrink. One more session on your house shrink and topics that sometimes get a little controversial. Yesterday I had over 1,000 people and I was talking about synchronicity, the meaningful events that occur that people call coincidences, but I explained how it works and it was really great. And it's now posted, as I have all of these posted the following day, on my YouTube channel, Dr. Mario Martinez. So you can go there and watch the whole thing. So I'm going to wait a bit before people start coming in. We're going to have thousands of people today because it's going to be quite interesting, maybe controversial, but you're going to learn a lot that you didn't learn in school or you didn't learn by the social media. So welcome. And the topic is going to be selfhood beyond gender identity. Interesting. So what I ask you to do first, if you're serious, to stay here. If you're going to be a clown, you'll be muted. And if you're going to be disruptive or inappropriate, you'll be blocked. Why? Because I love my audience and I respect my audience. And the people that are coming here to learn or to discourse. You could have ideas and you can have ways of dealing with people that have different opinions with you. But I'm going to give you science, and then I'm going to give you the alternatives that are available. And all that science is that it gives you evidence about something and it proposes that evidence. And then if you want to debate it, you don't debate it with feelings or ideas, you debate it with more evidence. If you say being tall is 6'2", okay, then you go to the normal curve and you see 6'2" is tall. But if you're in the Zulu country, 6'2" may not be as tall because many are 7 feet tall. It's relative, but it's also that if you're 6'2", you're going to be 6'2" here, you're going to be 6'2" in Zululand, and you're going to be 6'2" anywhere else. Just because you shift context, it doesn't mean that your biology changes. So I'm going to be talking about a very controversial subject. Many scientists don't have a backbone, and they're very afraid to talk about these things. And this is not insulting, this is right or wrong, this is giving you evidence, and you have to decide. A lot of times, though, scientists and professionals and professors are afraid to speak out because they can lose their grants, they can lose their jobs, they can lose their positions, and it's just like the Inquisition. It's what I call Inquisition sound bites. If you say something that's wrong, you could either be called a racist or a homophobe, and you stop the argument. You don't do that. You respect people and you dialogue with people, but with logic, not with stupidity. So during the Inquisition, back in the medieval times, if you were in disagreement with what the church said, the word there would be, the Inquisition soundbite would be heresy, and you would be burned at the stake, or the best that could happen to you is that you would be house arrested, and in between it would be that you would be tortured. Well, right now the Inquisition is alive and well. You don't get burned at the stake, and you don't get tortured, but you can actually be physically abused. You can lose your job. You can lose your grants. You can be discredited in your profession, and some people have actually lost their license to practice. So it's really something that needs to be addressed. So as you're coming in, and we're probably going to have thousands of people. Yesterday we had over 1,000 on a subject that was not as controversial. So I'll try to answer legitimate questions or comments. I'm not going to be able to answer it all because I'm assuming that there are going to be thousands of people, which are already just flowing. And I see some of the people that have been here before, so I have some followers. And remember, before I start, I want to remind you that I want you to follow my channel here, the House Shrink, and also follow my channel at YouTube, Dr. Mario Martinez. In this video, since you can only have videos for 60 seconds on TikTok, will be completely in its entirety downloaded, and it'll show up tomorrow, and you can go back and take a look at it and see everything if you came in late or if you didn't see the whole thing. All right. So anyway, again, clowns are going to be muted, and people who are offensive are going to be blocked. That's just that simple. Because I'm not going to waste my time with people that are here to distract you from things that are reasonable and that are important to know, especially since you're not getting since you're not getting the right information. Legitimate question: what is your doctorate in? Clinical psychologist, and I'm a specialist in how the immune system is affected by cultural beliefs. It's called psychoneuroimmunology. And I'm also a neuropsychologist, which studies brain syndromes that affect your body, and also the psychology that affects your brain. So anyway, I'm going to start with the subject, and the subject is quite controversial because people are not well informed. Once you're informed, then you can make decisions, but based on science. And science doesn't have all the answers, but social media has less of the answers. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. This is on a learning process, and I'm going to trust that you're going to be mature and reasonable and understanding that what I'm going to be talking about. And I'm going to go deep into it so you can see the information. The topic, if you just joined, is going to be selfhood beyond gender identity. And that gets very, very confusing. All right, so this is what I'm going to be talking about. Gender in the biological sense, there are only two genders, male and female in the biological sense. And they're also hermaphrodites. Hermaphrodites are people that are born with both genitals, male and female. So there are only two genders. Their identities and sexual preferences, and it could be as many as you want. But biological genders, there are only two. If you identify with the opposite gender, you can, but you're still that biological gender. And how is that determined? Well, let's look at the myth first. A lot of people would think that because of the Adam and Eve, that in the skeletal part of the gender, that a man has one more rib than the woman. That's not true. Both men and women have 12 pairs of ribs. There are some people that have an extra or one less, but you don't determine skeletal gender by the amount of ribs. That's the first myth that we're going to clear up over here. Also, another indicator of your gender, your biological gender rather than your identity, is the XY chromosome. The women have XX and the men have XY. But also, that's not a complete determinant. About a very small portion of the population a woman could have an XY. And in fact, some women have been mistreated, some women that have been athletes, and they were women in every sense of the word and in the biological sense, because they were that unique XY chromosome, they assumed that they were men, and they were excluded from the Olympics. A woman lost quite a bit from the Olympics. So see, if you take science to a ridiculous place, it can be very bad for you. And that's called the Swyer syndrome. It happens in 1 out of 80,000 people, that women will have an XY just like a man. And they're biologically a woman, it's just that the chromosomes are just X and Y. All right. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. Now, when I say that there are only two genders, male and female, in the biological sense, even when you have a transsexual surgery, your body is still a woman or still a man, and you've had transsexual surgery. I've done work with people that were going to have the transsexual surgery. In fact, there's a high percentage of suicide after that if they don't go through the professional process. So what we would do is we would work with people. Let's say a woman wanted to go from female to male transsexual surgery. We would see them for a year, and they would have to dress and live as if they were going to be the sex that they were going to become. And then after that, then they would be eligible psychologically to have the surgery, and it was reduced to 10%, because sometimes it's very, very high. Now, identifying, as I say, gender, here's the problem. What's happening? Gender, there are only two. Identities, sexual identities and identity of self, as many as you want. But here's what happens. Now, this is what's being manipulated. Before, in the DSMs, which are the statistical manuals to determine any kind of mental issues, mental illnesses or disorders, it was called before sexual orientation disorder, if you have a confusion in what you were. It's not called that anymore, and I think it's good because it doesn't pathologize identity. Now it's called adolescent dysphoria. And let me try to explain that. Adolescent dysphoria happens in a small amount of people, about 5% adolescent dysphoria, which means that very early in life, you have questions about if you're a boy, whether you're a boy or a girl. But when you have to be really careful with this is children don't know. They don't have a psychosexual development to know who they are. So and sometimes they're treated with hormones right away. I think that's ridiculous to do that. I think that and by the way, the people that have what's called the adolescent dysphoria, 80% of them resolve themselves as they reach adulthood without having to do anything. 20% do not. 20% are very persistent in that sexual identity, the opposite of what they are, and that's understandable and it's reasonable and it needs to be addressed and it needs to be accepted. No problem with that. But to now, some schools are creating these stupid courses that in 6 weeks or 9 weeks, you have to identify what your identity is. That's crazy. That's crazy. You don't do 6 weeks and do a forced choice where you tell people you're going to be gay, you're going to be straight, you're going to be lesbian. That's ridiculous. That's stupid because that's not good science. So what I'm trying to get you to see here is that the gender is a biological component, not an identity. You can identify with whatever you want. It's like if you're short and you want to identify yourself as tall, that's fine, but you're still short. So there's nothing wrong with a biological gender. And there's nothing wrong with an identity. You just have to be able to differentiate the two. One is a gender, and the other one is the identity that you give that gender, but the gender doesn't change at all. Okay, now, the point that I'm wanting to make here is that we are more than our gender identity. We are individuals, whether you're gay, or straight, or bi, or trans. We're individuals. In selfhood, the most important thing about selfhood is the value that you give yourself, the meaning that you have in your life, the sense of compassion that you have for yourself and for others, the self-esteem that you learn, the justice that you feel that you have with other people, the love that we have with other people. That's what's important. Let's see, we're born into a world of predefined boxes that we try to fit each other in. That's true, but you don't want to fit into any box. You just have to be realistic of who you are. If you were born a male, you are biologically a male. And if you choose to be another identity, it's an identity of your gender, but your gender doesn't change. And that's important because you can be at peace with yourself. You could say, I was born a male and I don't identify with my maleness. That's fine. That's fine. But you don't change your biology by thinking that you're something else. And that comes from social constructivism. It's a crap that's being taught in schools. Social constructivism says, well, biology doesn't mean anything. And you're just socially constructed. You can be whatever you want. And you can be whatever you want. But you can't deny science. You can't deny who you are as an individual. And I think you can celebrate whoever you are. And you can identify with whatever you want. You can celebrate that too. But don't confuse identity with gender. And something very interesting about hermaphrodites. Hermaphrodites are very rare. It's 1% of the population that's only hermaphrodites. And that would be a dual gender. That's what I call hermaphrodites. And these are people that are born with male and female genitals. And it's interesting that some of them actually can reproduce themselves because they have the semen as a male, and they also have the ovaries and they have the uterus, so they can actually reproduce. Highly, highly rare, but it does happen. It does happen. So look at the science. This is science. This is not beating anybody up because of the why is there 72 of them? 72 of what? There's 72 identities, not genders. A gender is a biological fact. An identity that you want to give it is something else. And you can have 72 or 102. It doesn't matter. But what is it that you are? For example, if you, and I'll give you another idea of what the biology of gender is. 200 years from now, unless you live more, and I hope you live forever, but 200 years from now, your body will be a skeleton. And 90% of the time, they'll identify whether you're male or female, even if you've had transsexual surgery. Because there are differences in the skull, there are differences in the pelvic, there are differences in the bone, how they're structured, all of that. But there's a percentage that is not identifiable, that you can't tell. It's an indeterminate. So you can't identify everything, but you can identify 90%. In fact, they've gone back to 10,000 years. They found bodies of, and the forensic anthropologists can identify whether it was a male, female, whether it was young or old, whether it had fractures, all kinds of information. So that's really important. Now, getting back to, if I can identify gender as a biological, and there are only two, or three if you want the hermaphrodites, everything else is an identity that you choose to have, and you have the right to choose. But to try to confuse kids when they're going into what would be, because by the way, every pre-adolescent and adolescent has a lot of existential issues, not just gender, but who am I, what am I doing here, how long am I going to live, a lot of questions about self. And if you identify it and you box it into everything has to be an adolescent dysphoria, then you're going to say, look, you're confused because you don't know who you are sex-wise. And that's stupid. That's very stupid. Some people have problems with that, but not everybody has problems with that. Adolescents go through an identity crisis. They have to go through it because that's what it's all about. Who am I? I'm not a child. I'm not an adult. I'm somewhere in between, and people treat me like a child. People treat me like an adult. So it's very important. Gender is not the same as self. No, it's not. Gender is part of self. Self is a complex cluster of your gender, your biology, your sexual identity, your sense of worthiness, your self-esteem, the things that you believe about yourself in life, religious or not religious beliefs. You're complex. You're not just one thing. And what I'm finding is people are just so over-identified with this sexual identity as if that's all you are. It's just if I walk around and say, hey, my name is Mario and I'm tall, or my name is Mario and I'm short. What the hell is that? Just be an individual and be free with the identity that you create for yourself. Perfectly fine. But don't confuse gender with identity because it's scientifically off. Although there's a lot of evidence that shows us there's some people that have, and by the way, you have some biological propensities that very early in life, you're uncomfortable with the body, with the gender that you are. To be uncomfortable doesn't mean that it changes. It's just that you're uncomfortable. And it's legitimate to be uncomfortable if you are. And it's legitimate to find peace in whoever you are. But that doesn't mean that it changes your gender. Your identity is what's changing, not your gender. Okay. I think Samantha's got a point here about psychological. What's happening is that many people don't know developmental psychology. And developmental psychology will help you understand that a 6-year-old doesn't have the ability to comprehend psychosexual issues. They don't have the ability to abstract. They go from concrete thinking to more abstract thinking, then they're able to abstract more. And when you try to talk to a child and try to convince them what they're a boy or a girl, whatever, at that age, it's stupid. It's stupid. For example, a child at 3, you can show them a ball that's half blue and half red. Okay? They don't know how to abstract and jump out. So you say, on the red side, what color is this ball? Red, and they'll always get it red. And what color is this ball? Blue. They'll always get it blue. And you do it 1,000 times and they'll get it right. But if you say, what color is this ball? Red. And what's behind the ball? Red. They can't abstract and say that there's a blue behind. That's a developmental process that we all go through. The brain is developing. The gyruses and the sulcites are forming. The foldings of the brain are forming, and you're creating an identity. And when you get to pre-adolescence, a lot of things start happening. You start having puberty changes and hormonal changes, identity changes, body changes. And when you're going through the adolescent process, it's a questioning. It's difficult because you don't know who the hell you are. So it's very important to understand that you can't impose a culture or a social belief or political correctness into biology. You have to understand that biology is there, you don't ignore it, and then you differentiate between biology and choices. Although biology can affect your choices, but it still doesn't change your gender. That's very important to see. Okay, now, any questions that you might have, if you're legitimately asking a question, I will try to answer it for you. If you're going to fool around, we'll just be muted and block you, because this is a disrespect to this audience who's here to learn. So anyway, let's say people, yeah, okay. People will say, this is the social component here, something coming up with, they say, for example, when you're a child, he's going to be a ladies' man when the child's a baby. But what if the guy, the boy is gay? Well, you don't want to tell people they're going to be a ladies' man or they're going to be this or they're that, because that imposes, or they say you're going to be gay, you're going to be straight. You don't want to do that. You want people to develop and learn on their own and help them understand, but you don't put a label on them. For example, it has nothing to do with that's not only sexual or gender. When I was a kid, I was told that I was going to be an engineer like my grandfather. And I said, oh, I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to be an engineer. I told everybody. Then I tried engineering and I failed miserably because I hated it. You see? So I said, nothing, not just then, is imposing on you. So finally I decided, no, I'm not going to be an engineer. I'll be a mediocre engineer. So I went into clinical psychology and I went to biology and I became what I wanted to become. Same thing. Gay, straight, lesbian, whatever. You don't impose on people, but what's being imposed on people now is that they're saying, oh, if you're not sure who you are, then you're going to be gay. Or if you're not sure who you are, you're going to be lesbian. That's stupid. You let people develop, knowing if a girl says, Mommy, what am I? Am I a girl or am I a boy? You're a girl. But I don't like to be a girl. Okay, all right. We'll just work on that and see what happens. You see? But you don't just, oh, okay, you're not a girl. Because you don't want to be a girl, you're not a girl. That's misunderstanding the biology. You can teach children things without creating some kind of social constructivism crap that's not science. So developmental psychology is really important. Biological development is really important to understand the processes that people go through. And as I said, people that have this adolescent dysphoria, 80% gets resolved on its own. 20% does not. They're very persistent, and you have to give them credence, and you have to confirm and allow them to be who they are. But 80% resolves itself if you kind of help them through. And the 20%, and it's not good or bad, it's just a choice. It's an identity choice that you make, and you are completely appropriate in making your own identity because that's who you are. Let's see, are you saying illegitimate, eliminate the labels and standards altogether until you can figure it out? Well, yes. You don't predispose people to things. You don't predispose like little girls are smart or little boys are dumb or little girls are bad with math. You don't do that because you're creating an attribution that is your own projection to that person. It's your own projection, your own thinking, rather than that. You have to let people grow through their own processes, the developmental process that people go through. And then you can guide them. You can tell them what is known about sometimes a little boy will say, hey, Mommy, can I wear a dress? Why? I just want to wear a dress. Okay, let them wear a dress. And they'll wear it out. And if they're going to be gay or if they're going to be something, that's fine. But sometimes what children are doing, they're experimenting. But if they wear a dress and you label them, okay, that's it, you can wear a dress from now on, that's imposing an identity on somebody who is trying to just check things out. A girl might be interested in another girl, might even feel sexual attraction to another girl. All right, allow that to be an issue, but that doesn't mean you're labeled at that time. We can have attraction without having to identify our sexual preference. Sexual preference will come on its own. And is it biological or is it cultural? It's both. It's biological and cultural. It's got both. And there's no shaming or anything. You can be whatever you are as long as you understand that the genders are a biological reality. And then the identity with the gender is your choice that needs to be respected. That's what it's all about. Gender roles, of course, that's another issue that you don't want to say, well, look, men do the mechanics and women do the cooking. That's imposing a reality that's your own. It's a cultural reality. In some cultures, by the way, women are treated like cattle. Women are worthless. In some countries, they don't allow women to drive. Can you imagine that? They don't allow women to drive, and they have to go out with their husbands. To me, that's degrading women. Other cultures think it's fine. I think it's degrading women or degrading anybody, or black or white or whatever. There's too much identity with race and sexual identity, too much. And people are not learning what the hell selfhood is. They're not learning who am I? Who am I, independent of my race and my sexual preference or whatever? Who am I? Look inside and look at what it is that you are, and then grow. Become a good individual, whatever your sexual preference is. Become somebody that can contribute something to society, someone that you can feel proud of yourself. And don't allow anybody to degrade you. Don't allow anybody to shame you. But at the same time, be clear on who you are. Yeah, another one is like boys will be boys. That's another. It's another imposition. Boys will be boys. What the hell is a boy? Well, boys will be boys. Girls will be girls. Girls gossip and boys don't. Forget it. Boys gossip more than girls. But anyway, any questions here? Legitimate questions. And what I want you to understand here is the difference between gender, two genders, and identity. Many identities. 72, 82, whatever you want. Any identity. But your gender doesn't change by wishful thinking into something else. It doesn't change that way. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can identify with whatever you want. If you're short and you say I'm tall, fine. But the height's not going to change. You're going to be, if you're 5'2" and you say, hey, I'm a giant, that's all right. It's your choice, but you're still 5'2". So that's the thing that I'm trying to bring together here. Okay, any questions or comments? Quite controversial, and most scientists and psychologists are so afraid to talk about this. Because what happens, they're afraid of being stopped by the Inquisition. They say, oh, you're a racist or you're homophobe. No, I'm a scientist. And I allow people to honor themselves, but I also bring science in. I bring what biology is, and then you can decide what you want to do with your biology. It's fine. Okay, questions? Somebody said, I'm glad you're here. Thank you. Some people probably are not happy that I'm here. But if you're here, then I want to welcome you. And this is about discourse. This is about conversation, not about you're this or you're that. That's called ad hominem argument, which means that it's arguing against the person rather than what the person is saying. In good science, we'll ask questions that other people will not ask. And that's how you learn. You learn by asking questions. Oh, you can't talk about that because that's politically incorrect. Well, the hell with political incorrectness. It's caused a lot of damage to our society and our group because people are not allowed to express themselves freely. For example, if you're an idiot, you have to be allowed to express yourself as an idiot. If you're a racist, you have to be allowed so you can make a fool of yourself. And so people can think, so this is what a racist is? Who the hell wants to be like that? But if you suppress it, it gets worse. Because anything that you suppress grows underground. You can't suppress racism. You have to let it out so it can show its ugly face. That's the way you deal with it. You don't suppress people talking about homosexuality. You allow them so they can show their ugly face. People are criticizing homosexuals and so forth. You have to allow. That's what free speech is all about. Now, offensiveness and speech that has to do with violence, no, that's not allowed. Speech that has to do with violence, I don't think that's not the First Amendment. That is abusive. Do you believe in evolution and natural selection? Yes, partly. It's not just evolution and natural selection. We, at a point, before we had language, about 30,000 years ago, it was all just existence and survival of the fittest. When we developed a consciousness and we developed a language, and consciousness came when we started burying our own dead 20, 30,000 years ago, when language came out, then it was more than the survival of the fittest, it was meaning. Let me give you an example. And meaning gives value to things. So you can see that Darwinian can only go so far, but it's not enough. It's necessary, but not sufficient. Let's say that you're on a pier, and there, you know the possibility of sharks there. You drop your pen, you're not going to jump in the water. But if your child falls in the water, you jump in and you don't think about it because you're giving value. Now, the Darwinians will say yes, because you're trying to survive the species, because you're wanting that child to survive. Let's take it to its logical conclusion. What if an old man who's 90 falls in, who's not going to contribute anything to the species? You still jump in because you give value to that person because it's a human being. So Darwinian can only go so far. It's Darwinian and cultural coming together, epigenetics and genetics coming together. That's what it's all about. So that's a good question. Thank you for asking that question. That's very nice. And some of the questions I can't see because I'm wearing light, and the questions are in light. So if you just joined, I'm speaking about the controversial topic of selfhood beyond gender identity. Ooh, let's be careful with that. Screw that. We are here as intelligent human beings who can express our views in a nice way and in a civil way, and then debate it, but debate it with science, not wishful thinking or political correctness or anything like that. So far we have some really good people here. We've had some muted and some blocked because they're just idiots that are just here. Why do people let this hate out? Is it because they were taught to hate at a young age? That's an excellent question. There are two reasons. One is ignorance, because ignorance is fear. If you hate blacks, part of you was taught to hate blacks, but part of you is afraid of knowing blacks. Or if you're afraid of, or you're prejudiced against gays or lesbian or whatever, that is based on learning. You were taught that, but it's also based on your fear. You notice that when kids get together, they don't say, oh, you're black, I don't want to be with you. They play with each other because they haven't been burned, they haven't been toxified. They play with each other and they see themselves as human beings and they enjoy each other. But once the culture comes in, especially stupid culture comes in and tells you, look, you don't want to hang out with gays, or you don't want to hang out with whites or blacks or whatever it is. And all races are racist, by the way. It's just that there's some races that, some people in some races that do not teach you prejudice, and some of them do. So we don't have there's no monopoly here on prejudice. Prejudice comes from all over the place, and it always comes from ignorance or fear. It always comes from that, ignorance or fear. So that's a great question. Anybody else? If you just joined us, we are talking about selfhood beyond gender identity. And what that means is that you're more than your sexual preference, you're more than your race, you're an individual that wants to develop and grow and become a productive member of society where you feel honored and good about yourself, where people love you because of who you are. Your honesty, your commitment, your loyalty, your honor, those are things that are really important. That's selfhood. And it just happens that in selfhood, you include your gender and you include your sexual identity. That's one, but that's not it. And what I'm arguing here is that you want to make sure that you're not just one thing. I don't go around and say, hey, I'm Mario and I'm heterosexual. Nobody gives a damn. They want to know who I am. And that's how it should be with people. How do you combat this ignorance and fear? What is the most powerful way? To allow them to make fools of themselves. Have you prejudiced? Oh, tell me, oh, I hate blacks. Well, what is it that you hate about blacks? Oh, they're stupid. Really? Well, we had a black president. How is that? How does that work? And you start giving them evidence to show their stupidity. Now, be aware that 10% of the population is not going to hear you. Let them go. Don't try to convince them. Just don't allow them to put their prejudice on you. But you deal with prejudice by exposing it, not by suppressing it. And that's a mistake that I see with political correctness. That it's a suppression, it's a tyranny, and that doesn't work. You have to allow yourself to express yourself, and if you're an idiot, be an idiot and let them see it. As a scientist, is faith without evidence the same as ignorance? No. Ignorance, it doesn't mean like you're a bad person. Ignorance is you don't have knowledge of something. You don't have knowledge of something. Faith is that you don't have evidence in the outcome. But ignorance is that you don't have knowledge of something, and that makes you then prejudice against something without the proper evidence. So they're different. All right, a lot of people are coming in, and we had over 1,000 yesterday. So with this one, I'm sure there's several thousand, and I'm welcoming everybody over here. But please make sure that you follow my work, even if you don't agree with me, because it's good to agree or disagree. But follow, because then it expands my audience. I can reach more people, and then you'll know when I have a video, and you can go and say, I want to see it or I don't want to see it. Let's see. Do you think that some people have evolved more than others? Yeah, of course. I think that when you, and this is what individuation is all about, selfhood. You individuate by taking the best of your culture, dumping the worst of your culture, and learning more and more about yourself. And the most important component in human being is in human beings is love. The ability to love yourself, the ability to love other people. Our immune system responds very well to love. When you love someone, all kinds of things happen. IgAs go up, which are antibodies that fight upper respiratory viruses. T cells go up, neutrophils go up, all kinds of good things. So we're designed to love and to be pro-social. Individuate. Okay, can I talk more about that? Okay, individuation is a concept that Carl Jung talked about. He was a Swiss psychiatrist, and he was a disciple of Freud and broke away from Freud because Freud was too psychosexual, and Jung said, no, we're more than that. We're spiritual beings, we're cultural beings, we're more than our sexuality. And individuation means that you learn the uniqueness of who you are, and you allow yourself to grow in who you are. For example, you find out you're unique in your creativity, and other people say, well, you're a girl, you can't be creative. Well, individuation says, screw that, let me explore my creativity. So you find out who you are, and you enhance who you are, and sometimes you have to leave the tribe because a tribe won't like you to individuate because you're no longer serving the collective needs. So individuation can be a little lonely, and this is why here, what I'm doing is I'm creating a subculture of wellness. So you can feel welcome here as long as you respect me and you respect the others. Welcome, no matter who you are, what you are, whatever. Even if you're prejudiced, you come out with your prejudice and we'll deal with your prejudice. And do you think the God delusion causes division and hate? Well, the God delusion, what do you mean by that? Everything is a delusion. An atheist is a delusion. An atheist has a religion of no God. So we create worlds, and we say, but science cannot prove it if God exists or not. Theology cannot prove it. An atheist has a belief that there's no God. A God or a religious person has a belief that there's a God. Neither can prove nor disprove. So they become propositions that we make to ourselves. Atheism is a religion, yes, and let me tell you why. They don't call it a religion. A dogma is a belief without evidence. When you begin to believe that dogma blindly, it becomes a religion. Not in a God or anything, but in a dogma. And atheism is a dogma, just like religion is a dogma. Be aware of that. Don't think that because you're an atheist, you don't have a dogma. You have a dogma. Atheists cannot prove anything, nor can religious people prove anything. So what I would suggest is if you're going to be an atheist or a religious person, be a compassionate atheist or a compassionate religious person. That's what matters. Many of my friends are atheists and they're great friends. And I have some religious friends who are just, you don't want to be around them. So it has nothing to do with that. Let's see. Atheists don't believe something because there's no evidence to support it. Yes, there's no evidence to support that there is no God. So there's no evidence. Atheists have no evidence that there's no God. Science cannot disprove or prove that there's a God. And religion cannot prove or disprove that there's a God. So it's a dogma. Dogma. All right. Religion has caused more wars and devastation than any... No. That's a bad argument. It's a bad argument. Nothing to do with religion. That's people that abuse religion. But the Nazis killed several million people, hundreds of millions of people, and it wasn't a religious war. It was an ideology of the socialism. So don't give me that argument because that argument is already debunked. Religion consider gays abominations. Well, some religions and some theologians. Other theologians believe that anybody is welcome. It depends. Don't generalize like that because that's you're not following reality here. There are many religions, in fact, Catholic religions, they're Catholic priests who are openly gay, and they have gay mass and all over the place, San Francisco, all over. So be aware. Look at your facts first before you come up with generalizations. And what I'm trying to do is to educate you, if you'll allow me. It's not generalizing anything. That's scripture. I don't know what that means. You don't have to have my permission to know that I know you're an intelligent human being. Well, thank you. That's all right. And it's a choice that you make. So what I'm giving you here is information for you to consider, not to change your mind, but for you to reflect and see, does this make any sense? Maybe, maybe not. If it does, take it. If it doesn't, throw it out. So that's what conversation and discourse is about. Not about me trying to convince you, but me giving you some evidence of what I know as a clinical psychologist and as a human being, and you may like it or you may not, you may accept it or not. So that's what it is. It's all about allowing yourself to be expressed. What's dogma? Dogma is a belief, a strong belief in something, whether there's evidence or not. Dogmatic. When somebody's dogmatic, they say this is how it is and that's how it's going to be. It has no scientific proof one way or another. And then you believe it to a point that you have faith in it. And when you have faith in it, I call it a religion. A religion. So Darwinism is a kind of a religion. It's not, religion is not just God. For example, the Buddhists have a religion without God. Buddhism is a godless religion, but it's still a religion. Okay. So now, any other questions? Any other questions here? Keep going. Am I a supporter of this or that? I am a supporter of anybody who is honest and who is compassionate and who is willing to be open with other people. That's what I'm a supporter of, no matter who you are. It doesn't matter. What matters, again, is selfhood. I'm talking about selfhood here, not sexual identity. Selfhood is more than sexual identity. You could be a good gay, a bad gay. You could be a good heterosexual, bad heterosexual. You could be good black, good white. It's the individual that matters, not your race or your sexuality or identity. It's who you are. And what I'm arguing here is selfhood is what we want to develop. And don't over-identify with your gender or with your sexual preference, because that's only a part of you. There's a lot more to you than that. That's the whole point here. That's it. That's the whole point. So other questions? Anybody wanting me to clarify anything that I said or anything that would be of interest to you? We have a hell of a lot of people here, which is great. I love it. It's wonderful. And by the way, today we have fewer clowns. It's gotten better. We had to, this is moderated. Samantha's moderating and she's doing a great job. But if you have a legitimate question, you're not going to be stopped. Do you support gays? Again, let me ask you again and answer it very. I support people independent of what they are based on who they are. Selfhood. If you're a good gay, I support you. If you're a bad gay, I don't support you. If you're a good heterosexual, I support you. Bad heterosexual, no. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with selfhood. That is so hard for people to understand because you've been taught a lot of shit and you have to understand that what matters is selfhood. I said I wasn't going to do any profanity and there I go. I'll use profanity. Well, that's how it is. Not perfect. Thank God. Perfection doesn't exist. Okay, any other questions that you find interesting to you or something that you want me to clarify? Not stupid questions, because stupid questions have nothing to do with the topic. Stupid questions are a way of, let me get a little attention. Let me be cute and get a little attention. Be real. Have an opportunity here to have a discourse. And the people that are just kind of playing around and screwing around, go somewhere else to play. There are many things you can see that have nothing to do with this. Do I believe the Bible is God's word? I believe the Bible is the Bible. I don't know if it's God's word or not. I have no idea. I think there are many good things in the Bible and also not so many good things in. What is the best antidepressant? I can't tell you because it would be unethical for me to tell you. It depends on the individual, on your clinical history, on whether you have anxiety with depression, whether you have psychosis with depression. That's a question that I will not answer because it's unethical for me to give you just a generalization without knowing who you are. So, but thank you for asking. Check with your psychiatrist on that, and I'm sure that he or she will give you some good answers. But it has to do on your clinical history and your needs and things like that, whether you need therapy or you need antidepressants or both. Usually both is better than one. Okay. Great questions today. Really, really good questions, and a hell of a lot of people. I'm really very impressed. Let's see. If you could tell someone one thing about living with a narcissist person, what would you say? If they're not willing to change, get the hell out. Because a narcissist is not willing to learn or chooses not to learn. They always put you down. You're never right. They don't like it when you succeed. They have to be the center of attention, and it's very difficult to have a healthy relationship. So I would suggest first try to get some therapy and see if it works. If your partner is not willing to respect you, not willing to work with you, then your choice to get beat up emotionally or to leave. It's up to you. But narcissists have a really poor prognosis because they lack compassion. They have it's all about me, and they cannot. It's really a hard to understand, but it's really a self-esteem disorder. They think they're great, but it's an overcompensation for low self-esteem. So they can't allow any criticism. They have to throw it back, and they're really good at it, and make you the bad guy, and make you the person that is wrong. And sometimes because you're normal, you say, yeah, you're right. They never apologize, and if they do it to manipulate you, to get back at you. I'm getting therapy. I do feel beat up, not physically. Okay, so see if the therapy works. If it doesn't, find another therapist or find another partner. I mean, I'm being serious, but I, give it all you can. But love alone doesn't work, unfortunately. It works with normal people, but with narcissism, they see love as an opportunity to manipulate you. So unfortunately, that's how it works. But get help, and you and your professional and your partner decide. I can't decide for you. So thank you. You're welcome. All right, I didn't say no problem. I said you're welcome. Get away from no problem. That's another video that I do. I'm not avoiding a problem. I'm just being grateful. Thank you. You're welcome. My pleasure. No problem. We don't use it anymore because it teaches your brain that you're avoiding problems. Let's see. We'll keep going on that and see, because if it's not a clear question, then sometimes it's very difficult to understand it. So if you can be clear, then I'll try to answer it for you. Low self-esteem. Well, watch my video on low self-esteem. It's had pretty close to 26,000 views already in just a couple of weeks, because I'm going directly into what self-esteem is and the 3 components of self-esteem and how to bring them up, and also what happens when you bring them down. So go to my video on the 3 pillars of self-esteem and you'll see it. By the way, if you just join me, this video will be completely downloaded. It's in its entirety, and it'll be on my channel of YouTube, which is Dr. Mario Martinez. When you go there, the first thing that I ask you to do is follow my work, because that allows me to reach a larger group of people, larger audience, and also it allows you to know when I'm on, and then you can go back and say, oh, here's this crazy guy again, forget it. Oh, wait, maybe I can learn something with this guy. It's up to you. So here, make sure that you follow my work here. First thing to do, if you haven't followed, just go and click follow on House Shrink. And then when you go to my YouTube channel, which has increased tremendously, thanks to you, I have over 500,000 views already on my channel. And just go there and follow, and then there are close to 200 videos that you can watch for free. Also, are you from New York? No, I grew up in New York and Miami, by the way. But I don't say 33rd Street, not Brooklyn and Bronx, but but I did grow up in Miami and New York, so you picked up on something interesting here. All right. Anyway, also I have 2 books, bestsellers, if you want to go deeper into this. One is The Mind-Body Code, and the other one's called The Mind-Body Self. And you can get it on Amazon or bookstores, but Amazon is the best because it's the cheapest. So you can do that if you want to. What do you teach? Well, just join. Here we go. I'm very glad to let you know. I'm a clinical psychologist, and today I'm speaking about a very controversial subject, which is selfhood beyond gender identity. And I'm talking about gender identity, that there are only 2 genders biologically, and their identities as many as you want. There's a male, female, and there are hermaphrodites, which are male, female. They have male and female organs that I talked about earlier. But what I'm saying is that selfhood is a lot more than your sexual identity or your gender or your race. It's a lot more than that. Your selfhood is what you want to develop, cultivate, individuate to become the best human being you can be. That's what self is all about. To identify you, knowing that there are over 7 billion people in the world, and there's nobody like you. Your model is unique. There's nobody like you. Even identical twins are not the same. Even though they have the same DNA, they have personalities and they have ways of being. So that individuation is a gift that you have. So enjoy it and celebrate it. Okay, I'm thinking of being in psychology. What is it like? It can be hell and it can be heaven, depending on what it is. Depending on what kind of psychology. I'm a clinical psychologist, so I deal with psychopathology and medical problems that have to do with psychological processes. You could be a researcher. You could be a professor of psychology. But psychology is advancing so much now because we have functional MRIs where you can see actually brain scans in particular things that are going on. What happens when you're afraid? You can see where it goes into the brain. What happens when you're in love? What happens when you're feeling anxiety? So there's a lot of information that we can correlate now with biology, which we couldn't before with the EEGs. So it's a great field to go into, and I would recommend that you look into it. Many of us are glad that there's no one else like us because they don't want anyone to be like them. Well, with all the hurts and imperfection. Well, it's not that. That's maybe part of it. That what I'm talking about is the uniqueness of who you are and the ability that you have to increase that uniqueness and the good things about you. And if you were told that you're bad, and if you have been bad, well, don't beat yourself up. Learn and grow. I talked about mistakes being approximations to your goal, not something to get abused with. A mistake is an approximation to a goal. And what you do is you say, okay, I went this far, and it just went so far. What stopped me? What do I need to do next? And I've talked about this many, many times, that people who are very successful have made more mistakes than people who are not so successful. Because the successful people are more willing to take risks, intelligent risks, than some people are afraid to take a risk because they're afraid of being judged and they don't get anywhere. How to be an inspirational person? I think I'm that. Well, be yourself and bring out the best in people. It's not about motivation. I think motivation is overrated. It's inspiration. Motivation is rat psychology. It's manipulating people to do something that they normally wouldn't. Inspiration is bringing out the best in them and allowing them to use their own resources to empower themselves. That's what inspiration is all about. And you want to learn, very important here, you want to learn admiration without envy. That's one of the causes of health. It's incredibly good for your immune system. You secrete oxytocin, which is a great neurotransmitter hormone that's wonderful for bonding, for the heart, all kinds of good things. When you admire without envy. If you have envy, no oxytocin. So the system is set up to be good rather than to be bad. Most of ourselves stop ourselves because we're afraid. Yeah, you were taught to be afraid about something, and when you're young, without you knowing it, you're taught, don't do this, don't do that, be careful with this, be careful with that. So life becomes like a jungle that you have to be afraid of. Other people say, yeah, try it and see what happens. Be careful with this and be careful with that, but try it, and if it doesn't work, try it again. That's the kind of thing that encourages people to learn. But if you're told, don't do this, don't do that, then the world becomes a jungle. They got to be afraid because you're going to be hurt. So a lot of this is developmental. It's learned behavior. Learned behavior. You didn't learn to be afraid. You weren't born to be afraid, I meant to say. You learn to be afraid. You learn to be joyful. Happiness comes and goes. Joyful is something that needs to be developed. And that's an internal process of your goodness. And I've talked about that, so there are some videos on that too that you can talk about. So again, if you just joined us, I've been talking about, I always start with something and then I jump all over the place, depending on your questions. That selfhood beyond gender identity. You're more than your gender identity. That there are two genders, male and female, and there are as many identities as you want. But male and female doesn't change. Even if you have transsexual surgery, if you go from male to female, you're not going to have reproductive organs. You're not going to be able to conceive. And the other way around. You become male to male, you're not going to have a prostate. What you have is transsexual change, but your gender doesn't change. And if you want to call yourself a woman, fine. A man, fine. But that's an identity. That's not your biology. So be aware of that. And there's nothing wrong with calling yourself whatever you want. But be aware that there's a biological gender. And there are genetic differences that I talked about. Let's see. What to do if someone manipulated you that you were bad? Well, begin to look for evidence that you're not bad. You can't talk yourself out of something. You have to find evidence. So for example, if somebody said to you, parents or culture editors who have a lot of power over you, oh, you're a bad person, you're a bad person. Ask yourself, what have I done that's bad? In your own judgment. I did this, I did that. Okay, now, what can I do to show myself that I'm a good person, or even if I was a bad person, I have an opportunity to change. That's the whole idea. Hope comes with change, and change comes with hope. So, all right, if I've been bad, how can I learn to be good? You don't know? Look at people that are good and try to imitate them. That's what admiration without envy works like. Why do people talk about themselves and not ask about you? Because they're a little bit too self-absorbed. They're too self-absorbed. And I think it's important in a relationship to talk about this and that, and what about you? What do you think about this? And if they don't involve you in their world, then it's going to be one-sided, and you're not going to get anywhere with people like that. So, okay, anyway, there's some things I don't want to get into here because I don't know if they're real or not. So if you have a real question, be clear so I can answer it for you. If you just joined, this is Dr. Mario Martinez. I am House Shrink, and make sure that you follow my work. It's very important you follow my work. Just go click follow, and that's it. And then you'll be notified when I'm on, and you'll have an opportunity to watch or not, but it expands the audience. Okay, somebody says, I'm a terrible listener. Well, that's what you learned. You can learn to be a listener by, instead of trying to answer something before people finish, find out what they're all about. Look at them, find out who they are. Get interested, get out of yourself and find out about other people. By the way, if you're a good listener, you learn a hell of a lot. If you're not a good listener, it just goes right over your head. You don't learn anything. You become more you and you and you, but you don't learn much about the world or other people. So anyway, yeah. So what is the question? Okay, make it more clearly. But be aware that anything can be learned. You don't have to beat yourself up if you're not a good listener, or if you don't care as much, or because you think you're bad. All of that was learned. And individuation is a way of dropping all the crap that you learned about yourself and becoming good and clear with yourself and say, how can I treat myself better with the action that I'm going to be taking? I'm going to be good to myself and I'm going to be good to others. That evidence changes your neural maps that makes you believe that you're good or bad. But it doesn't happen with just wishful thinking. I'm good. Where's the evidence? The brain says, where's the evidence? You need evidence. Once you give the brain evidence, then, oh, yeah, let me create some neural maps here to show and to confirm that you're good and make it even better. That's the neuropsychology of it. That's how it works. That's why a lot of people have affirmations, I'm wonderful, I want a car. That doesn't work. You need to use the agency, you need to your own action to let things happen. Have affirmations and then follow them with evidence. Follow them with action. You can affirm anything you want, but follow it with evidence because it's not going to come from the universe. The universe is too busy expanding. It's been expanding for almost 12 billion years, and it's not going to stop to get you a car or a new relationship. You can do it because you're your own universe. When she made me believe I'm bad, I started acting bad. Yeah, that's right, because when people, what I call the culture editors, which are parents and teachers and people in positions of power, clergy in church, doctors in clinics, and teachers in schools, and they tell you you're bad. When you're very young, you believe it. And when you're very young and they tell you that you're bad at something, your brain, your little computer hasn't developed enough, and what you think is, I'm all bad. You drop some milk, bad little boy, or whatever, all of you becomes bad. As you grow and you individuate in a healthy way, you realize that if you did something bad, it's bad action that you did that needs to be corrected, but doesn't make you a bad person. So you have a choice. What you were told, let it go, and start creating new evidence, and your brain will change. I promise you. But you have to, those are negative paradigms. Yeah, negative paradigms, you're right. And that's what it is. But you can change into a positive paradigm, not by Pollyanna wishful thinking, but action. Action is what changes your mindset, your default mode, neuropsychologically. Action. Okay, thank you. God bless you. You're welcome. It's my pleasure. Thank you for being here. So a lot of people, we had over 1,000 yesterday, and today is going to be, I'm sure, a hell of a lot more, but it's nice because a lot of people are joining us. If you just joined us, several things I want to say. Follow my channel first so you can be a part of our group. Then tomorrow, this video will be shown in its entirety on my YouTube channel, which is Dr. Mario Martinez. Go there, first thing you do, follow, so you can have access to it. You'll be part of our subcultural wellness. And what I've been talking about, and I just went all over the place, can anyone join your events? Yeah, I have events. I have workshops and mentorships, and what you need to do is, if you want to, you go to biocognitive.com, biocognitive.com, or you can have Dr. Mario Martinez, psychologist or biocognitive, and Google it, and it'll take you there. My memory got really, really bad. How do I work on it? First, don't think that it's dementia. Of course, you can have it checked out and everything, but what happens with memory is that you're not paying enough attention, or you're trying to multitask, or you're not paying attention to what's happening at the moment, and you're distracted all over the place. So, for example, you get up from your room and you go to the kitchen and you say, "What am I doing in the kitchen? I don't know." Immediately is, "Oh, my memory." Go back to where you started. Go to the room, and it'll tell you, "Oh, I went to the kitchen to get some water." So there are many ways. Read my books, The Mind Body Code and The Mind Body Self. They're both bestsellers on Amazon. So there's a lot of information there. But if your memory is bad, make it better by evidence, by paying more attention to what you're doing. If you have glasses and you leave them somewhere, I left my glasses on the table. It's not, I left my glasses and I go. You have to make a connection, and gradually your memory will get better. So that's what I was asking about. What I was working on. Does no stimulation for years make you have bad memory? Well, no stimulation for years keeps you stagnant. You're not learning. New learning is very important. That's why when people retire and they go to watch a sunset in Florida or somewhere else, they get sick within a year. They live 4 or 5 years. The brain needs to be challenged. It needs new information, what's called new learning. And if you don't do that, you stagnate, and like anything else, it gets worse. The brain was made to learn new things at any age, not just to a certain age, at any age. I had no stimulation for 3 years. It doesn't matter if 3 years or 100 years. Begin to learn, begin to question, learn a new language, learn something new, and you'll see how your brain, because it was made for new information, it was made for novelty learning. Try it and you'll see. Oh no, I'm scared. What should I do? About what? What are you scared about? If there's legitimate questions, I'll answer them. If they're not, we'll just let them go. So if you just join me, first thing to do, follow my work. Follow How Shrink. And then tomorrow you can go to my YouTube channel, which is Dr. Mario Martinez. Follow there, and you'll be able to see this video. It's under Selfhood Beyond Gender Identity, which is how we started. You're really scared of your memory. Okay, be scared and still practice it. You be scared. Give yourself, okay, I'm scared, but I'm still going to learn these things. Don't say, oh, I'm not scared. You're scared. But practice, and the scare will go away because it'll give you evidence. So that's what you do. And I'm oversimplifying, but that's what you start with. That's how you do it. And of course, you can have it checked out if you want to see if there's any problem. But if there's no problem, that's what you do. You're scared. You're scared of what? Of the outcome? The outcome's going to be good if you do good things. All right, just join us. The initial topic, and I've gone all over the place as I usually do, was selfhood beyond gender identity, which means that selfhood is more than your gender identity or your sexual preference or your race. It's much more than that. And don't let political correctness tell you that that's very important. What's important is you, the quality of who you are, and how you want to grow and individuate yourself. Individuate is an important word, which means that you become more and more the best in you. So you gradually improve. And when you do, you're individuating away from the bad things that you were taught with evidence of the good things that you're doing. That's a difference. What you're doing, not what you were taught. All right, I think we're getting close to winding it up here. And we've had many, many people today, and I'm very glad that you're here. I really appreciate what you're doing here. Somebody said, went to YouTube and found you. Great. Yeah, go to YouTube, and it's Dr. Mario Martinez, and the first thing you do, follow. Click the follow. Here, the first thing you do is follow. I'm putting in a lot into this, and all I'm asking you to do is to follow. I don't get paid for this. To follow only to be able to reach more people. That's the point. Clinical psychologist giving you free advice, not therapy. I'm not doing therapy here. I'm a licensed psychologist, but I don't do therapy. It would be unethical to do therapy. I'm doing education here. That's it. And I have very, very bright students, everybody here. The ones who are serious, you're fine. The clowns can go somewhere else and watch whatever's going on out there. Let's see. How often are you live here? Almost every day, actually. I'm coming up. I'm coming up with a lot of things. Yesterday we had over 1,000 people on synchronicity, and today it's about selfhood and beyond gender identity. I'm always tired and dizzy. What should I do? Well, have a doctor check you out first, because I don't know. Sometimes it's stress. Sometimes it's what you're eating. It could be an ear infection. It could be many things, but you should have that diagnosed by a doctor. It would be irresponsible for me to say it's this or it's that. I have some ideas, but it needs to be looked in by a professional and then deal with it. No doctor? Well, okay, so then do it on your own. But I think doctors sometimes are needed. I don't like to go to hospitals or doctors, but when I need to go, I go. Because it's people are going to try to help you. But go to doctors that have compassion. Don't go to doctors that are just technicians, because they make you more afraid than anything that you can do. So dizziness can be caused by many things: blood pressure, ear infections, all kinds of things. So make sure that you have someone look at it. If you want to, if you don't, you don't. But make sure that if you want to get it fixed, get professional advice and then go from there. So, okay. Any other questions before I go here? And if you join me late, make sure that before you go, I think it's from meds. Yeah, medications can actually cause that. The side effects of medication, depending on what you're taking, can cause dizziness and everything. So again, you talk to your doctor and see what the side effects are, and especially what is the medication interaction sometimes. Sometimes medication can even affect food, and food can affect medication. So you have to talk to a professional on that. My fiance has depression and is hesitant to see a therapist. Well, try to work it out on your own, and if it doesn't work, then say, look, we tried it, let's go to a therapist and get some help. Depression has a wonderful diagnosis, a good diagnosis, whether it's with medication or with therapy. It has a very good diagnosis, so there's nothing to be afraid of. But depression can be very dangerous because it can affect your whole life. So make sure that there are a lot of good professionals out there, and that's what I would suggest you do. Okay, now coming to an end. So if you just joined, this video will be completely available tomorrow. It'll be downloaded into my YouTube channel, Dr. Mario Martinez. Go there, and the first thing you do is you follow, because you'll have access then and you'll know when I'm doing something. Does bipolar go away? Bipolar is an illness. It's a mental health, a mental illness that has to do with high levels of euphoria, high levels of affect, and low levels back and forth. You can be manic and you can be depressive. It's treated with medication. In some cases, has to do with circumstances. Some cases has to do with post-traumatic stress, something that happened to you in your life. But usually, there's some kind of biological component there. Sometimes you have to be on medication. Sometimes, at some point, you can be off medication, but always with professional advice. Never on your own, because bipolar could be dangerous. Your judgment can be affected with bipolar affective disorder. So always consult the professional and consult the medication and ask for a different kind of medication if one's not working for you. So you need to work with a professional who's willing to work with you, that don't think that they're gods. They're people that are teaching you something. And if something doesn't work, ask for something else. Be aware, you're a consumer. But always check with your professionals. It's very important to be responsible with you. All right, several thousand people today. So it's really wonderful that you're here, and you The medicine 5 milligram is always too high. I cannot help you with that because, again, it would be unethical for me to tell you about something if I haven't seen you. So you have to check with your professional. That's what they're all about. And don't be afraid to ask questions. They'll be willing to work with you. And if they're not, go to another one. Find another professional. You're a consumer. But I can't answer things here that have to do with clinical decisions because I don't know you. So it would be unethical and irresponsible for me to do that. So I hope you understand. You talk to your professionals and they will help you. All right, again, if you just joined, the initial topic was selfhood beyond gender identity. And I talked about that. And if you missed it, it'll be all over tomorrow on my YouTube channel, Dr. Mario Martinez. And the first thing you do there, I ask you to just follow, as well as here. Follow. If you haven't followed my house shrink, please do. And then you'll be notified. You'll know when I'm on. I'm on almost every day. How much time should a person with bipolar, again, that's a very clinical question. Your psychiatrist has to decide that with you. It's a mutual decision that you make. And sometimes you can be, you can cut your meetings down to once a month or whatever your psychiatrist tells you. I can't tell you because I don't know your situation. So you have to work it out with your psychiatrist. So I can't answer personal questions for you. I'm very sorry, but that would be irresponsible for me to do that. Talk to your psychiatrist. If you don't like your psychiatrist, go to another one. But if you're bipolar, make sure that you have professional help. And there are many things you can do with bipolar. It's not just medication. There are many things that you can learn. All right, diet and many other things that you can learn. Okay, so I think now I'm really going to leave. And I know that I get enticed with questions. Every time I'm going to leave, somebody comes up with a question, and I try to answer it. Okay, so any other questions? If not, then I want to say have a wonderful day, and I will see you soon. And make sure that you follow here, and by going to my right here on House Shrink, and then go tomorrow or tonight, you can go to my YouTube channel, which is Dr. Mario Martinez, and follow there. God bless. Thank you very much, and thank all of you for being here and for being so professional about it and so understanding. And I gave you an example of what a natural, healthy discourse is all about. To express opinions and to not beat each other up and to respect each other. That's what it's all about. So I'm glad you joined my Subcultural Wellness. You'll always be welcome here. If you're decent and civil and you don't offend anybody, anything that you want to do will be fine. All right? Enjoy and have a wonderful evening, everybody.